For the subject diplomacy, theory and practice, our group will present about the multi-track diplomacy. Multi-track diplomacy is practice for making peace. There are 9 tracks in multi-track diplomacy. These 9 tracks of diplomacy is giving the opportunity or the chance for all the states in the world, especially for the small countries, to develop their countries.
Diplomacy is a practice of conducting a world deal or negotiation on war, trade, and economy. There are many types of practice in diplomacy, such as bilateral, regional, and multilateral relations. Multi-track diplomacy is one of the concepts found in the practice of diplomacy. Multi-track diplomacy was practiced by Joseph Monville in 1982. It is a process of peacemaking and peace building in international relations.
For the 9 track of multi-track diplomacy, it is an expansion from the track 1, track 2 organization or pattern that covered and established by a different procedure to settle the conflict during the last decade. The bodies of this 9 track is government, non-government, business, private citizens, research, training and education, activism, religious, funding, and public communication. All these 9 tracks are different with each other because it covers with many kind of issue and problems to keep world at peace. And this 9 of the track of multi-track diplomacy is important because without one of these track, the state might be triggered because they thought that there are still some problems that can be resolved. So all the state in this world need to help and cooperate with each other to get the values and benefit from this track, because the value is not given to only one state but to all the states that willingly to help each other.
The multi-trade system was originated due to the inefficiency of pure government mediation. The 9 trade of multi-trade diplomacy was related with each other, and each trade has their own advantages and disadvantages. 3 trade of multi-trade diplomacy was chosen random to show the advantages and disadvantages. Firstly is the 4th trade of multi-trade diplomacy through private citizen. The advantages is that is to be able to do positive activity for the purpose of peace without government interventions. The disadvantages is that the activity carried out tend to be more subjective and without discussion being held together. Next is the 8th track diplomacy through funding peacemaking through resources, through providing resources. The advantages is that activity aimed at creating peace can continue to be carried out because they are not financially disturbed. But on the other hand, the disadvantage is that there is abuse in the use of funds for things that can be harmful. Lastly, the 9 trade of diplomacy is media and communication as a tool for creating peace through information. The advantages is that the information is wide open, so that is easier for the public to contribute in support of various effort of that support peace. The downside is that there are propaganda actions that lead to the radical that can influence public opinions.
Multi-track diplomacy is focused on identifying and understanding the cause of conflict that happen within the nation. For an example, there are a diplomacy conflict that occurred between nation A and nation B. We believe that there must be a reason behind the conflict that happened. It may be due to some misunderstanding in the communication or lack of cooperation between one party, or whatever the reason is. Who we are to decide it without the investigation, right? So this is why the multi-track diplomacy exists to identify what is the cause behind all conflict that occur. If multi-track diplomacy succeed in the investigation and can explain to both conflicting parties about the reason behind the conflict that occur, multi-track diplomacy can develop mutual understanding between those conflicting parties. In words, multi-track diplomacy plays a big role in solving the problem that occur. With multi-track diplomacy helps, they can trust each other back and can negotiate with each other on what relation they are going to build after this. How is the process of multi-track diplomacy? In my understanding, the process of multi-track diplomacy is really simple. Imagine that there are two governments having a meeting together, shaking hands, and sitting at a table and negotiate an official agreement. So, multi-track diplomacy has two alternative forms, which are dialogue track 1.5 and track 2, where the participants that involved in this meeting is absolutely different.
As a conclusion, the establishment of multi-track diplomacy occurred due to the inefficiency of track 1 diplomacy and track 2 diplomacy. The inefficiency of track 1 diplomacy can be seen in 1990s when the conflict among states increased, and the complexity of unofficial diplomacy was unrecognized by lumping all track 2 diplomacy under one label. In order to assess the needs and promote cooperation between the social classes, multi-track diplomacy uses all layers of the society. It has 9 tracks such as government, private citizen, research, training and education, business, and a few more. The role of the state is shifting. Thus, through the establishment of more inclusive structures like state relationships, disputes can be handled and eventually resolved within heterogeneous communities.